All right, you have a Blender model, an FBX model from Blender into Unity. How could we use this in our game? First of all, make sure you're on scene view so we can see all of our game objects. Let's do this. Let's go over into our hierarchy and let's right click and create an empty game object. So I want to get my bamboo model into Unity. So whatever model you're going to get into, let's just give it a name. So I'll just say bamboo, whatever. This is an empty game object. So obviously if I zoom in on this game object, there's nothing there. It just has a position in space. What I'm going to do is you're going to take your FBX model, the one with this little, probably has a little arrow on it, and you're going to click and you're going to drag it and you're going to put it right on top of this bamboo game object. Bloop. And if all of your export settings worked, you should see, probably depending on the scale of your model, you should see it in Unity. So now I've got this massive bamboo in my game. Now, almost never will your size be completely correct, so thankfully we can change that really easily. Mine happens to be too big, so I'm going to use these familiar tools that we've used before. I'm going to choose the scale tool, and I'm just going to shrink this down. And now I'm hovering in space, so I'm going to pull it down. And now it's just a matter of taste. For example, I'm starting to realize that my bamboo model was maybe just a bit too realistic looking, and it doesn't really fit the vibe of this game. For if I shrink it down, it kind of looks thin and hard to see. And I don't like that, at least for the style that I'm going for. So I do have these options to scale it. I'm going to make it a little bit fat. Make it a little more video game looking. Let's see, let's try a 0.1 by a 0.1. So I'm distorting my model a bit, but it is what I have to do, for I should have made it a little more cartoony looking in Blender, but that's okay. Because now I think it looks pretty okay. It looks decent. Looks like some bamboo. It's easily seen. The leaves are a bit frigged up, but that's okay. I can always fix that later, but I won't right now. So once you're happy with how your model looks in your game, we're going to have to basically zero it out. So you've got your mesh, you've got your model with your materials, and you've got your empty game object. This is such an important step, and sometimes I forget, and I feel like sometimes you guys will forget, but it's so important. I need to zero out the position of my game object. I also need to zero out the position of my model. Okay. So now that both of my positions have been zeroed out, I'm doing this because I need to basically know exactly where this model is going to be once we start writing code. So it's just going to keep things clean here. I will pull this up a little bit, just because I want it a little bit off the ground when my game's running. But now it's fine. The X and the Z's are the most important part here in terms of those being 0. So you should see 0, 0. I lifted mine up a bit. That's fine. I want mine floating in space a little bit. I don't want it touching the ground. So boom, 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 bing, bing, bing. Now, the next thing is, if you remember these balls that we created, they were colliding with the walls, right? Your player was colliding with the walls. And yes, that was partially from the character controller, but the character controller only recognized collisions because it had this collider component, this sphere collider. Basically, the sphere collider is the thing that was making those collisions, and it was added by default so we didn't have to worry about it. If I click on my model, I don't have a sphere collider. I don't have any collider. So I'm going to need to add one because I'm going to need to collide with this bamboo. Either the bamboo is going to need to hit the wall, or I'm going to need to hit the bamboo. And I need to know where this bamboo is, or I need to have that collider to detect those collisions. So leave the model alone. Leave this from Blender. This is you don't touch this. This is just how, let the materials and the mesh renders. That's how we're gonna make the model look how it is. I'm interested in the parent, the game object, the root game object. So I'm going to add a component, and if you type in collider, you should see all of these different colliders. We're only interested in the ones that don't say 2D because this is a 3D game, so you can instantly scratch those ones out. But we have different colliders for different shapes. So depending on which your model looks like, you might want to use a different collider than me. Maybe your shape is more boxy, so you would use a box collider. Maybe yours is a sphere, so maybe you'd use a sphere collider. Really, the most popular ones are either box, sphere, or capsule collider. I'm going to use a capsule collider because it's a little bit cylindrical. Yeah, it looks like a pill kind of. So whatever collider you use, once you add it, you should see some kind of green bounds, some green regions. So that's where the collisions will happen, right? So as long as something enters inside of these green lines, that means a collision has happened. Now you'll notice that it's not perfectly lined up with my model because I haven't changed any of these things. And all I need to do is play around with these properties to kind of get the right shape. So for example, the radius looks a little too big, so I'm going to tighten it up so that it more closely resembles the shape of my bamboo. Maybe like a 0.12 or something. You can see my collider is going into the ground. It doesn't need to be that tall, so I'm going to reduce the height, maybe by half. And then I'm going to pull the collider up like that. And if you've never done anything about video game development, it's always best to be too forgiving than not forgiving enough. So for example, your collider shouldn't ever be too small because it's very frustrating if a player thinks that they've hit your bamboo or your model, and in reality, the game hasn't registered it. So if you're going to lean on what side, you should always lean on giving them too much space. You don't want to shortchange them. And now I'm just making sure my collider is basically centered around my mesh in the X and the Z directions. And it looks like I've done a pretty good job of encapsulating my bamboo. So yeah, you're just playing with these properties here, and if you're using a different collider than me, you'll have a little bit of different ones. Capsule one's probably the most frustrating one to use, so hopefully you didn't have to suffer too much. But yeah, now I've got this mesh and fully enclosed, ready to be collided with. Now the last thing we need to do is I'm going to use this bamboo over and over again in this game. I'm going to spawn it. I'm going to keep track of it. There's going to be many bamboos running around in my game. So I basically need to create this over and over again. I'm not going to just do what I did 100 times over. That would be insane. That would be insanity. What I can do is I can click on this root object. I can click it and I can drag it back into my assets folder. And you'll notice your little cube becomes this full blue cube. What you've done is you've just created a prefab. What that is it's basically a blueprint. So I can delete that bamboo from my game because I have the prefab now. And if I want bamboo in my game, I just take it from here and I just throw it in there. I take it from here, I just throw it in here. I take it from here, I just throw it in there. I can create as many bamboos as I want in my game now. And they're all just chilling. So this is called a prefab, and that's a very important concept in Unity. And we like prefabs because it's easy to write code to spawn these things for us and keep track of these things in our game. And there you have it. You have now basically mastered the segue from Blender into Unity. Ready to go, ready to be interacted with. The only thing that's missing is the code and the scripts. But we already know a little bit about that now. So voila. Cool stuff.